Hello everyone, or no one, Overnight Siren here. Now that my post-con depression and fatigue have worn off, I've decided to do a short review of the 2023 North American Final Fantasy XIV Fanfest, held in Las Vegas last weekend. Overall, I really enjoyed the experience of my first FanFest. Having played 14 since open beta, this is something I've always wanted to do, and finally had the drive to do with so many people of my FC choosing to go. That being said, it was far from a perfectly executed event, especially from an organizational standpoint. So I just wanted to go over some of the highs and lows and offer some suggestions in the off chance that they somehow reach anyone's ears from the Square Enix management team. Now again, this was my first FanFest, so I'm not sure if past ones were organized better, had more activities, etc., so please let me know in the comments how past FanFests have differed. Now, the first major scandal of this FanFest were how the ticket sales were handled. It was via a lottery system. This may be a hot take, but I don't actually think this was the worst way to go about it. As we've seen with other recent high-demand events, most notably the Taylor Swift Eras Tour making national news, ticket sales for popular events are just hard to manage. You either open the floodgates to first come, first serve, and end up with a ton of people scalping, and people losing out on tickets due to the fidelity or lack thereof of their internet, or you do a lottery system and end up with people being upset about RNG. Now, of the two, I'd personally rather deal with the lottery system because, to me, it's fairer than trying to compete with someone who has 4 computers and 2 phone numbers running 2 browsers each, trying to grab tickets to scalp them. There was also a lot of backlash at the time over the quote-unquote small number of tickets sold, and at the time, I 100% agreed with them. 15,000 seemed like such a small amount. But having been to the FanFest, boy oh boy has my mind changed. Having been, they needed to either sell 5,000 less tickets or sell 5,000 more but double the amount of space and activities. So all that being said, let's talk about everything else. First off, the good. Being in the room for the keynote was an amazing feeling. The energy from everyone around me and our shared love and excitement of Final Fantasy XIV was palpable. So was the shared confusion about the Fall Guys announcement, which was really funny to experience. Even though we didn't get much news, it was still exciting to see something that I'd previously only seen on Twitch streams so many times in the past. The visuals of the main room were also great. They had a lot of vistas that looked like they had been pulled right out of Final Fantasy XIV, particularly the Old Charlian Harbor and the Loprit Rave area. The Rave area in particular, I really wish had been expanded into a whole room for like an after-hours rave event. That would have been so fun. The mini-games at some of the locations also looked really cute and fun, and I wish I'd gotten to experience them more, but more on that later. I think the concept of having NPCs give out the quests was also really cute, and the actors they hired seemed really into it and did a really good job. Shout out to this NPC in particular. He can definitely slide into my DMs if he wants my digits.
Expertise. Can you please spare a moment from your busy god-slaying agenda to help with this special spell for spell side quest?
I'll try.
You'll try.
Yeah.
That's sometimes the best that we can do. Yes, I understand.
That's the best I could do.
Yes, I understand.
The free tote bags we got were also surprisingly really high quality, and the stuff inside of them was nice too, though I do wish we had gotten a free digital code for an exclusive emote or minion, even if it was one that was going to be added to the MOG station in like 3 months or something. As far as FanFest run events, the cosplay showcase and especially the piano concert were major highlights. It did help that we got amazing seats for them, though. Amanda's voice was incredible, and she just seemed so genuinely appreciative of the fan base, to the point that she almost seemed starstruck by how starstruck we were, which was really adorable. But the biggest pro for me was my FC meeting up. I run a very large FC, one of, if not the largest and most active LGBT-centric FCs in North America, and we organized a meetup of about 20 of us and had t-shirts made up and everything. A bunch of us ended up hanging out together all weekend, with others coming and going through the weekend during and after Fanfest hours. It was really great meeting all of them and becoming real-life friends, too. That alone made the whole trip feel really worth it. Now I'm going to move on to some of the misses and suggestions on how Fanfest can be improved. I think the biggest issue holding Fanfest back is the lack of direction, or rather, a lack of reasonable direction. It is quite apparent that Square Enix wants Fanfest to be an E3 type of event, but they just don't have the amount of announcements to make it that. One keynote and a 2-hour live letter are simply not enough. What they need to do instead is to treat Fanfest like any other normal anime or video game convention, but all about Final Fantasy XIV, with 2 big announcement showcases, the keynote and the live letter. To this end, they can then double the space and have a second, perhaps smaller stage with additional seating. This other stage can then host other panels. They could then bring in some 14 voice actors for a panel or 2, maybe invite some 14 content creators or streamers for a panel, stuff like that. At the same time, while all this is going on, they could have an expanded merchandise hall and combine it with an artist alley, where Etsy artists can sell 14 prints and things. All of this will make use of the additional space they've hypothetically rented, while it also gives people more to do, and making the room feel less cramped because people won't be all in the same room the entire time. This will allow people to move from room to room and not have a situation like we got, where it's like 12 to 13,000 people in the main room at any given time with nowhere else to go, because the only other room was the Battle Challenge / merch room, which you couldn't even get into on after Friday because they sold out of merchandise. All of this would make the convention much more comfortable, more engaging, and more fun, and they could even sell more tickets, which would make people happier because more people could go. The next suggestion I have might be a bit more personal, but I think given the sheer size of North America, we really need 2 Fanfests, an East Coast and a West Coast. Even if this means one of them won't have as many announcements or many announcements at all, I think the draw of being an official Final Fantasy XIV Fanfest alone will be enough to get people to go, even if the Fanfest they go to has less info. They could easily hold it at the Javits in New York City, or somewhere in Atlantic City if they want some really cheap large space. There's also a lot of large venues in Maryland, like the Gaylord at National Harbor, or the Baltimore Convention Center, or the Boston Convention Center. I'm just saying there are a lot of options. I think one thing they did change from past Fanfests was changing the cosplay contest into a cosplay showcase. The contest had previously, I believe, selected in advance who would actually walk on the stage by sort of weeding out participants, for lack of a better term. This may sound kind of elitist, but I think I'd have preferred that, just because the showcase we got was so many costumes, and because of how many there were, they often grouped people up together. Now, I'm not sure if they grouped people together if they signed up together, or if it was totally random, but we'd get situations like, here's Reen as the Oracle of Light, and she's with someone in crafting gear. It just felt really random from a thematic perspective, and I'd personally rather have a smaller selection of really high quality cosplays if it meant we got to spend more time with each of them rather than rapid fire through a ton of cosplays of, varying quality. Again, this is a very minor complaint because the showcase overall was still a really big highlight of the whole Fanfest for me. Speaking of the cosplay showcase, I think it also would have behooved the event to have some sort of system to reserve seating. I'm really not sure how they could have handled that, but it did kind of stink that we had to basically grab our seats for the cosplay contest show at 3 p.m. when the show started at 4, that we had to stay in them for an hour until the show started, through the entire show, and then we had to sit in them for another 2 hours so no one would take them for the piano concert, just to ensure that we'd have seats. As nice as it was to sit down, we really were sitting for like 5 hours, and I guess I would have liked not having to stress about losing the seats if anyone had to get up, or stressing about finding good seats to begin with. I also thought the decision to give away meet and greet passes at random felt a little confusing. Like, they could have easily made those a paid first come, first serve reservation system. They would have easily sold out and made a ton of money on them. People would pay so much for those tickets. But instead, they just put random meet and greet tickets into random people's bags. There was no guarantee that those people would then even be able to go to those meet and greets. Someone in my FC, for example, got a ticket to meet Ishikawa and ended up not being able to go, so they just gave it to someone else. I can't imagine how many other people who came, by themselves without people in their FC got meet and greet tickets, and then those tickets just got wasted. I guess now I'll move away from suggestions and move into things that are kind of just complaints. There are, of course, suggestions on how to fix these issues, but the fixes are so obvious that they should have been obvious to the planners before the event itself. So I'm just going to say there's really no excuse for these things to have been fumbled so hard. The entire event was so poorly staffed and supplied. The food was a major, major issue. At around 3 p.m. on Friday, the first day of Fanfest, they basically ran out of food. Going down that side of the room, it looked like every single food cart had a massive line, but that's only because it was so poorly organized. After asking a few people, I found out it wasn't several large lines, it was just one really large line for Papa John's. The other carts had much smaller lines, so I decided I really don't care about pizza, so I got in line for the Greek gyros. When I got to the front, however, I found out the reason this line and all the others were so short compared to the Papa John's line was because there wasn't any food left in them. It was the same for the hot dog line, the pretzel line, etc. Instead, they were just selling chicken salad sandwiches, which was also running out. The only food option that still had its advertised food was the Papa John's line, but because of that, the line was, no joke, 2 hours long for Papa John's. There were also similar supply issues encountered when it came to the merchandise room. You had to get a ticket just to enter the merch room, but they ran out of merch room tickets on Friday because they didn't have enough actual merchandise to keep giving away tickets to that room. How is it possible that a convention that sells such a very specific amount of tickets to even go to the convention can then run out of supply of everything on its first day? Like, you had a very clear head count of how many people would be coming, and you didn't have enough food for one day or enough merchandise for one day. I know in the case of the merch room, it's partially because there was no limit on how much merchandise people could buy. So once people were in the room, they were just cleaning house, and then I presume going to be scalping it later. My next complaint is about the security. There was none. They were very adamant about us only bringing in water bottles, but not one time was my bag checked. My wristband wasn't even checked, and I actively saw other people letting their friends without wristbands into the convention through side doors. I don't know if it just wasn't enough staff to monitor all this, or if the staff was apathetic, but it was not a secure event by any means. Speaking of the staff itself, my last complaint is that they were very rude. On Thursday, when I pre-registered, the guy gave me a wristband but didn't tell me it couldn't be loosened at all, so I put it on pretty tight. When I got out of the wristband room, my friends told me that their line attendants told them not to make their wristbands too tight because they cannot be loosened without breaking the wristband as a security measure to keep you from trading it or selling it to anybody. And that if it does get broken, we cannot get a replacement. So I went back in and I asked the manager if I could have my wristband loosened a little because I didn't realize it couldn't be loosened by us, and had I known that, I wouldn't have made it so tight. He asked why I wanted to loosen it, and I just explained, well, I'd only made it so tight because I thought I could loosen it a little later and maybe slip it off if I needed to shower or swim in the pool or sleep. He said, well, you can still sleep with it. And I explained, well, I probably could, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to. And I explained it was just a little too tight and that I'd prefer not to wear it at night, especially if we were going out or in the shower. And he said, no, you have to wear this all weekend, even when you're at home. Well, no, I don't. You can't tell me what I have to do outside of the convention center. So I just asked if he could even just snip it off of me and throw it away if he was afraid of me trading it to someone and then just give me a new one. He rolled his eyes extremely visibly, and then he finally gave me a new one. But this was such a long back and forth for a convention that ultimately didn't care about security at all anyway. The most egregious staff interaction, however, came at the very end of the weekend. So the event had 5 side quests given by NPCs like I mentioned earlier. They were really good and in character, and the quests basically equated to take a picture at this location. You then took your pictures to the badge redemption line. If you completed at least 3 quests, you'd get a digital badge in your Fanfest app by scanning the corresponding QR codes at the front of the line. And you'd get like a poster at the end. There were a lot of other digital badges too, like sightseeing logs, the battle challenge, minigames, etc. I completed all my quests on Friday, but I waited until Saturday to turn them in because my group was waiting for a friend to do them too, so we could just wait in line together. We found out on Sunday that apparently they were just giving away the poster to everyone and not even checking if you finished the quests, which is fine. So we waited in line, we got our poster. The poster wasn't really anything amazing, but I still wanted to get the digital badges because I have a weird compulsion to be a completionist, and I had gone through the trouble of taking the quests and talking to the NPCs and taking the pictures. So I got to the front of the line, and I got my poster, and I politely asked the line attendant, hey, I know I don't need to scan the QR code, but can I still stand off to the side to scan it just for the badges? And she went from 0 to 100 on me. She immediately started yelling, no, we don't have time for that. Do you see how many people are here? We don't have time to scan 10,000 people. Get out of the way. When I was already out of the way, and I was offering to stand even further out of the way off to the side to scan them. I just said back to her, there's no need to be rude, I was just asking a question. But it honestly really upset me since I had spent $200 on Fanfest tickets, plus so much more for travel and accommodations. I spent all that just to be treated like that by staff. It really killed motivation I had to do anything else at Fanfest for the rest of the day, and as a result, I never played any of the mini games like the Proto Carbuncle beanbag toss or the old Charlie and fishing thing. And I was the one really advocating for my friends to do that all weekend because I wanted us to do all the Fanfest activities. We spent the money on these tickets, I wanted us to get our money's worth, and after my interaction with that staff member, I just decided I didn't care anymore. So that's all I have to say. Like I said, overall, I really did enjoy the experience, and I would go again even if it was organized the exact same way, but I know that I'm personally willing to deal with a lot more BS than a lot of other people, so I can't say that anyone will have had the same feelings. There's a lot of room for this event to be amazing, and maybe it's just because this is the first Fanfest in a while, but it definitely fell short in a lot of areas that could have been easy fixes. So let me know in the comments if you went to yourself or if your friends went, if you had a good time, if your friends had a good time, what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. I just want to talk about it. I'm sure, some people feel the same way. Some people might have thought it was perfect, and if so, I am happy you had a great time. I did too. Anyway, that's all. Talk to you later.